Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a little trip down memory lane back to the 1980s RC car boom. We're focusing on Tamiya's big three, the Frog, the Grasshopper, and the Hornet. Now, for a lot of us who grew up with these, there's always been this question, right? Why does the Frog, the oldest one, always seem like the better performer, even when you bolt better parts onto the Grasshopper or the Hornet?
That's a great question. And what we're going to unpack today shows it's really not just about opinion or like nostalgia. It boils down to some really different engineering choices. Fundamentally different, the Frog. Built for racing. Performance first. The Grasshopper and Hornet, though, they were aiming more for, well, simplicity, being tough, easy for beginners to handle, and understanding that difference is, I think, the real aha moment for you listening.
Okay, let's dig into that, starting with the benchmark. The Frog. That space frame chassis was something else, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Totally groundbreaking for the time. It wasn't just a simple plastic tub. It was this open, rigid structure, lightweight ABS plastic, almost like a little roll cage.
Yeah, you can really see the structure.
Yeah.
And the battery placement, super low.
Exactly. Deliberately put way down low, underslung. That screams race design, all about stability, keeping that center of gravity right down.
And the front suspension on the Frog? That was key too, right?
Absolutely key. It had a true double wishbone setup, proper upper and lower A-arms. Now, what that does is it controls how the wheel tilts the camber as the suspension moves, really precisely. Maximizes the tire patch on the ground, especially in corners, better grip.
So it wasn't just bouncing up and down randomly.
Not at all. And they had these clever steel wire radius arms, too, to handle the front-to-back forces. It means when you add good oil shocks to a Frog, you're not just making it less bouncy. You're actually unlocking the potential that's already there in that superior geometry.
Okay, makes sense. And the back end, also different.
Oh, yeah. The Frog had true independent rear suspension, or IRS. Each rear wheel could move up and down on its own.
Which means better traction, right? Over bumps and stuff.
Exactly. Keeps the wheels on the ground more consistently, more stable. Plus, those cool aluminum oil dampers were mounted low, again helping that center of gravity. Now, that IRS is probably its single biggest advantage over the others, though we do have to admit the Frog had its weak spot. That diff and gearbox could, well, strip if you pushed it too hard.
Right, the infamous gearbox issue. Okay, so let's pivot. The Grasshopper and Hornet, different philosophy entirely.
Completely different. Their base was the bathtub monocoque chassis, basically a simple one-piece tub, much easier to assemble, much more durable for, beginners bashing around. The body is the frame, pretty much.
But that simplicity came at a cost, performance-wise.
A big cost, especially up front. They used a very basic independent swing axle front suspension. Imagine the wheel just pivoting from one point on the chassis.
So the wheel angle changes a lot as it moves.
Wildly. That's the problem. You get a really poor camber curve. The tire contact patch is all over the place as it bounces. Leads to, well, inconsistent grip, vague steering feel, and the original friction dampers. They just relied on rubbing parts, basically like a pogo stick.
Ah, yeah, I remember that bouncing. So what about the rear suspension on those two? I know they were different from each other as well.
Right. The Grasshopper had a simple fixed pivot, rigid axle, both wheels locked together like a little go-kart. Predictable, if basic. But the Hornet, it had the rolling rigid axle.
Ah, the infamous Hornet hop. This is where that comes in.
This is exactly it. And it shows why just adding better oil shocks doesn't always fix things. See, when you accelerate hard in a Hornet, the motor's torque actually twists the whole gearbox upwards around its pivot points. This physically pulls the rear shocks to their maximum extension.
Lifting the wheels off the ground.
Exactly. Causes the rear wheels to lose contact and just hop violently. Skittering for traction. It's a fundamental geometry issue. No amount of fancy damping completely cures that basic flaw. Ironically, the simpler Grasshopper rear end, even with basic shocks, was often more stable under power because it didn't do that twisting motion.
Okay, wow. So fast forward a bit. What about the later models, like the Grasshopper II or the Super Hornet? They got upgrades like 540 motors, CVA oil shocks.
They did, yeah. They got more power, better shocks. But crucially, they inherited the exact same fundamental suspension limitations. Still had that swing axle front end, still had that rolling rigid rear axle prone to hopping.
So the core architecture didn't change?
Nope. And this leads to, I think, a really important takeaway for you listening. The Super Hornet is a perfect example of a performance ceiling. You can throw more power at it, you can put better shocks on it, but the basic geometry, the way the suspension moves, fundamentally limits its handling. It's just never going to have the composure or the ultimate potential of the Frog. See, upgrades on the Frog, like a stronger gearbox, they enhance its already good design. Upgrades on the Hornet are mostly trying to mitigate its built-in flaws, like trying band-aids for the hop or complex conversions for the front end.
So the verdict seems pretty clear then. The Tamiya frog's reputation isn't just rose-tinted glasses. It's genuinely down to that deliberate, race-focused engineering. Double wishbone front, proper independent rear. It was built from the ground up as a performance platform.
Exactly. And conversely, the Grasshopper and Hornet line, look, they're icons, they're beloved for a reason. But they were always meant to be the accessible, tough, fun bashers. Their handling quirks, like the Hornet hop, they've almost become part of their charm, haven't they? But that difference just highlights how much those core design choices dictate where the performance ceiling is going to be, no matter what parts you bolt on later.
Which leaves us with a bit of a provocative thought for you to chew on. How often do we try to just upgrade something, could be anything, not just RC cars, without really understanding its basic design limitations? Where else might just adding better components fall short because the fundamental architecture just wasn't built for that higher level of performance in the first place? Something to think about until our next deep dive.